I think that whenever you go into the sales training world, you get I would call the Grant Cardone style people, which are these big gorillas banging their chest about, you gotta close more, you gotta sell more, man, you gotta call them back 10 times a day, whatever crap comes out of their mouth. And people buy into that, right? And then you go, and I would say me and you on the second category is the more post sales trainers that are actually saying, well, first of all, that stuff's not very effective. Secondly, if you're constantly pushing for a close, you're not going to feel very good when you go to sleep at night. So you're actually pushing people things that maybe they don't want. And that's where I think the starting line is for the ethical selling.
You're listening to the Sales Today podcast, and I'm your host, Fred Copestake. On this podcast, we explore how sales professionals can develop a modern approach to winning business, the application of virtual selling techniques, how to create meaningful business relationships, and much more. Why not take our free collaborative selling scorecard to see how your sales approach suits today's environment? You'll find a link in the show notes. And welcome to this episode of the Sales Today podcast, where I'm delighted to be joined by Giulio Segantini. Giulio is a sales trainer. He's telling me, chief underdog. so Giulio, welcome. Chief underdog. What are you on about, sir?
I totally stolen that from Dale Dupree because he's the chief of the sales rebellion. And I was like, I like that idea. Let's be the chief of nothing. That's a good idea. Well, he's actually chief of something. I'm not. I'm just chief of myself.
But what do you mean by the underdog? So it's actually, I've got your LinkedIn profile in front of me, and it does make a lot of sense to me, which I think is pretty cool. And I like what you do, which is why we're talking.
Well, I mean, I've always said this idea of that the underdog is the people that I like the most, the people that resonate the most with me. You know, even in movies when you see the little guy that wins up, etc., like that's what I really drives me. And I don't care about helping big corporate companies about making 0.5% better profit. It's much more interesting to see a founder get their first 10 clients. So that's why I place myself with the underdogs, which are basically the lower level salespeople of this world that are trying to go to the higher level.
Yeah, no, I like it and the stuff that you stand for. And of course, I'm British, so we love an underdog. We absolutely love it. No, look, I mean, we've chatted a few times before. We see a lot of stuff you put out on LinkedIn. You have some strong opinions, which is great, and particularly around ethical selling. We've talked about this a couple of times, so I'd like to talk to you kind of a little bit. We could talk about ethical selling in its whole, but particularly, you've already alluded to this. You talk about winning new business. That's what you get up for. So let's connect ethical selling to that. And I'd love to get some of your thoughts on it, how that kind of pans out.
Of course. Well, I mean, I think that whenever you go into the sales training world, you get I would call the Grant Cardone style people, which are these big gorillas banging their chest about, you gotta close more, you gotta sell more, man, you gotta call them back 10 times a day, whatever crap comes out of their mouth. And people buy into that, right? And then you go, and I would say me and you on the second category is the more post sales trainers that are actually saying, well, first of all, that stuff's not very effective. Secondly, if you're constantly pushing for a close, you're not going to feel very good when you go to sleep at night. So you're actually pushing people things that maybe they don't want. And that's where I think the starting line is for the ethical selling. And this goes into new business as well. So trying to win it ethically, I think is a great way to position yourself in the market.
So for others and yourself. I mean, that's what it boils down to. So yeah, it's not, I agree with you both those. It's not effective, doesn't work. Somehow people still sign up for it, that feeling good thing. And they're both important areas for us to look at. So let's just talk about why isn't it effective? Why doesn't it work? Why, if you are thinking it's a clever thing to do, should you just stop now and start adapting better ways?
True. I mean, I don't think the people that think that will be listening to this podcast, to be honest. If you are, maybe you are recovering, which is good. And I'm happy that you are listening to this. So like, stay tuned in a bit longer. I mean, I quit my job after I read 10x. I actually really liked the 10x book. This idea of like putting effort, etc. Then I started reading some of the stuff from Grant Cardone and others, and I just realized they're rehearsing this ego-driven type of sales, which is just not psychologically accurate. Because I mean, there's only one hero in the prospect story, and that's the prospect. And if you're trying to take the light for yourself because you've got this insatiable ego of being a small man with, like, without any specific reference, but there's a few small men in the sales training world that think they gotta own everything. Then that's the point where you start become more and more ineffective because it's your ego. It's not nothing about what the prospect really wants.
Oh, I agree, 100%. I mean, the hero's journey, I think, is a useful thing for salespeople to understand. The monomyth, the one story,
Yeah.
where, the hero of pretty much any film, any story,
Hmm.
they have helpers and aides and people are supplying them with the magic potions and all the stuff to help them on their battle through the thing they have to go through to come out better on the other side.
Of course.
We
Of
are
course.
the helpers. We're the sort of the assistants, the mentors, the guides. They take so many different roles, but not really
Hmm.
the person who the story's about. Definitely the customer.
Absolutely. I mean, we were talking about it today on LinkedIn, right? And this is something else that I've seen with Dale Dupree, which I'm very I see him as really the leader of this second wave of sales style. And it's the fact that sales is a server job. And if we think about it in any other way, you're already stupid, right? Literally. Because if you think you're the hero when someone else is paying, something has gone extremely wrong in your thinking. And the moment in which you really put the prospect ahead, and that's also, I think, the main difference between good people and bad people is when you actually try to work in others people benefit. You just feel better about yourself. It's pure and simple.
And that's the I mean, yeah, so I mean it doesn't work. Those pushy, those manipulative, those 80 style tactics. I mean, they make great cinema. I mean, ironically, we're talking
They
about
do,
hero's
yeah. They,
journey
they,
and
they make great
oh,
cinema,
it's
absolutely.
dramatic, isn't it? I'm the closer and suits, awesome. Actually,
God, yeah. Suits for
Harvey
the
is
generation.
actually pretty good at heart and the stuff he does. But anyway, people might not see that, so they weren't in the reference. But
Mhm,
this feel good about yourself, which is very much in line with what I say. I think sales is all about good people doing good things in a good way.
mhm.
But feeling good about yourself at night, that's an interesting angle. Tell me more about that.
The reason I'm saying this is I actually come from a probably one of the most cutthroat type of sales job, which is recruitment, right? But I was very lucky because the owner of the company was an extremely ethical Englishman, actually. And he always cultivated the idea that if what we're doing is not in the best interest of the client and candidates, because you got two types of prospects in recruitment, just to make
Mhm.
it a bit easier, then at that point you're not doing your job right. And and what helped me at the time is also to, and the crazy thing is, not only you're gonna feel better if you're doing good for everyone, but people will start talking about it. And then eventually your reputation will precede you. While anyone that bought sales training from a Grant Cardone type is extremely unlikely to be like, wow, this was the most effective stuff ever. Some people are, but because their level of self awareness is so low that they wouldn't be able to tell if they're looking themselves in the mirror or God, right? But most people that actually want to increase their numbers and be better, they'll realize there's a really strong correlation with doing good things in a good way.
I mean, sales is a tough job, isn't it? Let's face it. Let's not pretend that it's anything else.
Of
Even when
course.
it's going well, it's quite tough.
Yeah.
Um, but to put this pressure on yourself so that kind of psychologically you're twisting yourself up and getting into a state that way, I mean, that's not a good place to be. So almost from a selfish point of view,
Mhm.
don't do it because it's not good for you. As well as not being good for your clients. I mean, that would be
I think
if you are a selfish person, still don't do it.
but I think the real problem is that a lot of the people that are attracted to sales jobs, like there's the statistic, 42% of salespeople fell into sales, right? And some of them turn into the best salespeople ever. And I bet me and you probably would be in that category. Not the best salespeople, but the one that fell by. I know I fell into it by mistake. I don't want to say we are the best salespeople ever. That's what I mean. But when you look at it, I think a lot of people that seek sales themselves is because they want money. And generally, people that see money as the end goal, they don't tend to be, one, particularly smart, and two, particularly ethical. And that's why this Grant Cardone, Dan Locke, and whatever other people out there with this pushy, crappy sales, they get such a good momentum because there's a lot of bad salespeople that all they care about is the short-term reward. And unfortunately, some sales teams and companies are built to support that. They love the cutthroat mentality. They love the always be closing, etc., etc.
Yeah. Did I fall in sales? I got into sales because you get paid to talk to people.
that, that was why I stayed in sales for me. But I didn't realize I was getting into sales when I worked into recruitment. I thought it was for me a way to get into HR because I wanted to be with people. Then realized the HR don't actually spend that much time with people. So that maybe I should be in recruitment.
You find your way. But I suppose, my very first job was when I was 8, wasn't it? And I was like helping at a family business. So I was just chatting to folk and helping them do stuff. I didn't know it was sales at the time, but yeah, talk to people. You get given a car. Again, back in the day, got given a car, nice car. When you're 20, whatever year old, you get a far better car than you can afford.
Then yeah, exactly. But again, this is the type of thing, right? A lot of people. If you think about Jordan Belfort, right, the movie, the first recruit he makes is when he shows up with his Cadillac or whatever car he's got, and there's Jonah Hill that shows up to the capper and is like, "What's that?" So I made 7K this month. Like, no way. You show me the paycheck, and I'll come work for you today. That's the type of culture that we cultivate. And if you Google best sales movies of all time, The Wolf of Wall Street will be probably like top 5, if not top 1.
Yeah, dramatic, isn't it? But let's talk about talking to people or getting to talk to people. Because that's a big part of sales as well, isn't it? Prospecting, which I know you look at. And let me throw in the word pushy and being pushy.
Of course.
Do we need to be pushy to an extent?
I would say, like, okay, define pushy first of all. Like,
well, I wanted you to define it. You're the getter.
Fine.
Then I will. Don't worry.
I'm trying to think because I think I can definitely because the pushy. But the way I would see it is I'm just relentless. Like, for example, if someone tells me to go away, I'm not going to be sitting there like trying to turn them around. But I'll give you a very stupid example. Like, I was calling someone the other day. I introduced myself. I introduced the reason of the call. And the guy was like, "No, go away." And I literally said like, "Oh, did I sound that bad?" Which is usually my go-to when something like that. And he's like, "Well, look, you're calling me out of the blue." I said, "You're probably a recruiter. And I don't know, you got my number. You haven't introduced yourself properly." And I was like, "All right, fair enough. You're totally right. I should introduce." And then we started the conversation. We didn't book a meeting because the guy was leaving the company, but he's like, "Okay, call me back in 6 months. We might be talking." Things like this. So if I just went with the standard of like, well, the guy said, "No, I can't help you," then I wouldn't have had a good conversation. That would be my thinking there.
Why were you so relentless or so resilient in pursuing the conversation?
Because I have a feeling, I mean, we're going to get a bit deep in psychology here, right? That at the beginning, this is what I call a knee jerk or a reaction or a brush off, right? So this is not his rational brain talking. This is like, if you want to talk in the thinking fast as low terms, this is system 1 talking. Calling me out of nowhere. I don't know who you are. Go away. And he doesn't know what the value of the conversation potentially is yet. And that's why I'm keen to at least give it a go to turn it around. And it doesn't always work, obviously. But at this point, I want to make sure that it's the rational decision is making, or at least it's more forced decision is making rather than a knee jerk go away.
Because of the value of the conversation that was going to ensue.
Because I believe I have this belief that might be stupid, but I'm thinking if I sell you something, right? I make some commission, company makes some money. Fundamentally, the buyer is the one that gains. And if this is not something that you believe, then you're in the wrong company. Get the hell out. Period. This is a non-negotiable. But even when I was working recruitment, I was feeling like, okay, this person, if they buy, they're gonna be happy because they'll get a candidate, they'll get blah blah blah. This person gets a new job, etc. So as long as the final goal is to make the person happy or satisfied, then yeah, I'm willing to push for the first barrier.
Yeah, because what you've done is you said, well, look, I know what we do, I know what they do, I know where that can come together, and where potentially there is mutual benefit. They're going to get great outcomes, and of course, we're going to get that reward as well. And so, it'd be unethical not to talk to them. Yeah, to go back to the ethics. That's why, and I guess there's this knee-jerk reaction. So I just want to take it to that level to just start to explore that.
Mhm.
Then if it's coming to nothing, okay, fine. But
Mhm.
that's where
Cool.
you would be. And look, I'm using the word pushy a little bit deliberately, aren't I? Because
But it's
it is
good.
a
It's good.
contentious word, but that's why you would be relentless or persistent or brave, or we could relabel it. Yeah.
Of course. Of course.
Okay. Another way that we might be, and again, let's just use the P word, the pushy,
Uh-huh.
is in the conversation where you need potentially to push a little
Mhm.
the customer, the prospect.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, look.
Or should I relabel it as challenge? Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Help them make sense of stuff by
Yeah.
opening their eyes to something that they might find uncomfortable and you might find uncomfortable, making them uncomfortable.
Yeah.
That's a key part of modern selling as well, isn't it?
I think if you don't do that, you're just a very average salesperson, and you're what Benjamin Denney qualifies as a order taker, right? You're just trying to facilitate someone from the sales process, but they're already half convinced. And I recently been introduced by the idea of from Zach Thompson that sales is therapy, and taking that person down the problem funnel and figuring out, do they really want to do something about it? It's something that if you're not doing that, again, I don't think you're not ethical towards your employer or yourself. You work for yourself, and if you're not helping a potential prospect to uncover an issue that it would make the life better, then I think that's also unethical. But a very thin line, because if you know psychology well enough, one could argue that you could try and intensify pain to bring them to a decision that you want, right? So I think it's a very fine line, and sometimes it's difficult to walk it properly, I would say.
Yeah. So we're talking about technique in that case, aren't we? And how we might use certain techniques, certain skills,
Mhm.
certain ways of
Or,
interacting, if you like.
challenging towards
Yeah.
a direction, yeah.
However, there are some other principles, there are some other elements of ethics, of ethical selling,
Mhm.
which are your guidelines, your guide rails as to kind of
Mhm.
when do you stop pushing because they're too uncomfortable, or when is it actually
Mhm.
you're doing this for your benefit, not theirs.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah, maybe even some of the techniques that you might use.
Mhm.
That's where we have to kind of have that broader understanding of, well, I'm trying to do this in a way that's collaborative. That's what I use that term. How can we collaborative? How can we work on this stuff together, sit side by side?
Mhm.
Think like a partner. Sometimes you've got to give your partner a bit of a nudge. Donald will tell
True.
you
True.
that. But equally, she'll
True.
nudge me
True.
back. Yeah, because, but it's done with the best intent. It's done because we want to
Mhm.
get ourselves to where we
Mhm.
both know it's a better place because we've talked about it.
It's true. But and actually, it's interesting when you were mentioning this. There's something lit in my head that's fundamentally, especially if you're talking about more complex type of sales, which is generally what you're required to be talking to people. Because the low level staff, people do this themselves these days. You don't have anyone doing calls for £50 deals, right? So it's usually thousands upwards. And it's very unlikely a prospect is going to make a decision that they don't believe in themselves. So if you challenge them and they got to a conclusion, usually it's because they got there themselves. And finally, and this is the part that maybe like I always use as a mantra, is that if you always behaving ethically and you got the best interest at heart, the chances of them later waking up and be like, oh, I felt manipulated are very, very low, which is always just going to snowball affect your brand on the world. And if you become known as this person that will always make the right decision for the prospect, you really don't have to sell anymore. People just want your advice at that point. Simple as that.
Yeah. I mean, for me, informed decision making and transparency, they're both key parts of sales. And this is where some people who don't get it will listen to us and think, you guys haven't got a clue what you're talking about. You shouldn't be training sales. Because this is where you give people all the information they need. Not,
Mhm.
I'll give them the information about me, and I really hope you don't understand this stuff about the competitor because they're actually better at this thing.
Mhm.
You know, if you're ethical, you'll say, hey, look, if this is the most important thing for you, then
And go there.
this
Yeah.
should be probably the way you would go. However,
Yeah.
if these other things are more important, well, then absolutely, yes, let's keep talking. But you need
Mhm.
to have all this information to make your decision safe.
Yeah.
Fire safety
Absolutely.
is a big issue, I think, that we're
Uh,
starting to talk about more and more, but not enough, in my humble opinion.
It's because people are forced to, right? Because it's with the advent of online reviews and starting to really people can look you up and figure out what's going on. It just makes it a lot harder for mischievous salespeople, basically. And I think that attitude. I mean, if you try to push something that's not going to work, uh, I actually made a post about it, like literally, I think it was this morning or yesterday. The like sometimes you got this prospect, it's not the right time, and it genuinely is not the right time, and you can push, and 0.1% of the time they will go through, right? Uh, or you can wait and nurture, etc. And you're probably going to get like 15% or 20% potential conversion rate. So you're gambling on a 200 to 1 chance just because your ego is telling you, like, I got them now. I'm going to try and push.
Yeah. And you don't, yeah, it doesn't work. And you've now told yourself with the brush of being like someone who's a bit pushy and actually not the one I want to talk to when the time is right, because I didn't really enjoy that discussion. I didn't like the way you went about it.
Yeah.
That's what you're like when you're supposed to be trying to court me
Mm,
and impress me. What are you like if I sign? I mean, you know, when we know that potentially some things can drop off, which is
true.
another point. But yeah, yeah. It's funny you said the online review thing because I thought, yeah, totally. And they were actually no. I mean, before online reviews, yeah, I think in most industries they're pretty incestuous. I mean, people know each other. They work in the similar companies. You know, they
True.
move
True as
around.
well.
They
True.
talk. You know,
True.
competitors. You know, talk. Meet at trade shows. They say, "Oh, have you come across that guy? Yeah, guy right in here, do you? Yeah, I don't talk to
True.
no, not me."
True.
You know, so it's.
It's
I'm just
become
amazed that people don't think about this. Why that should be dead obvious, shouldn't it?
it should be, but again, there's also the fact that the overall problem with sale that I always repeat as a mantra is that nothing dies and everything works. So even the stupidest technique will work sometimes. And you know, if you sound confident enough and if you sound authoritative enough, there are some psychological principles that will help, you know, and then you will be able to pretend social proof, etc. So you will still get sales by doing things this way. So the problem is because that works, there will be always people that are banging on about it. And it's usually the people that can't do it. Therefore, they start to teach everyone else how to do it the wrong way.
Nothing dies, everything works. Is that because every day on LinkedIn, something is dead? Cold calling is
I
dead. Emails are dead. Social selling is dead,
yes,
which is a weird one to put on LinkedIn. But anyway, yeah, there's something dying every day. Yeah. Yeah.
I am particularly. I literally something else I wrote vehemently about. I feel like an old man complaining about new generations by just saying, like, look, there are people making, hi, how are you? My name is blah, blah, blah from company X, Y, Z calls and still get meetings. And it's just the way that it is, right? And there are people sending, hey, I hope you are well emails and still get meetings. So overall, things, if you go to the grand scales, things will work. And this is the problem, but you need to, it's about effectiveness. It's not about whether it's the yes or no. It's never yes or no.
Yeah. No, I don't know. You might have saw me laughing when you were talking about kind of some of the psychological principles, and I wrote authority down here, and I just love. I can't remember the name of that experiment. The
The
one
one
where
that's
they got the
quoted like
person to be
quoted.
electrocuting somebody
Yeah,
if they
yeah,
got
yeah.
somebody stood there with a clipboard and the white coat, and the person like it's gone past danger, and the person's on the other side of the
Yeah.
panel screaming, going, oh, they're like, but because the doctor, in inverted commas, was saying, no, it's okay, the person still did it, even though they probably knew it was wrong,
Of
because it was
course, of
going
course,
across, you know,
of course. But actually, I brought this up recently with Zach, who's one of my coaches, and he mentioned, yeah, okay, you can persuade someone on the short term, but like getting them to come to their own conclusion, it's not something you can do that easily. So if you look at the Wolf of Wall Street, where you could sell $20,000 over the phone, blah blah blah. These days, it's very rare you're gonna get someone to you get a call out of nowhere, and this guy's gonna wire you $20,000. Maybe one time out of a million, but I don't think it's that straightforward anymore. Like a lot of things have evolved in this sense.
well, I mean, we're broadly talking B2B anyway, aren't we? So we know
Yeah,
the
true,
decision
true,
making
true.
units are growing.
Yeah, yeah.
More and more and more people involved. And if you think you're talking to enough people, my advice is you're probably not. There's probably some ways it's kind of like that
But
simple.
that's gonna be fixed soon. You're just gonna be talking to an AI, you know?
I'll send my AI. They can have a chat, and I'll go out with the real person. We'll have a beer, decide we like each other. Yeah, let's do some business.
Yeah.
But we'll go full circle. We'll go full circle in the way that's kind of the sales that I used to, not always over a beer actually, but yeah, kind of quite personal. The human element will come in. Um, ah, awesome, awesome, awesome. Look, we could chat about this stuff forever, and I can't believe time has kind of caught up on us already. You give me a couple of little maxims, a couple of little kind of mantras. Are there any more that I need to be aware of before we start to sign off? Because I love them. What was it? Nothing,
I mean,
nothing
mantra.
dies, everything works. And what was the other one? Yeah,
I
about
think
being.
the only mantra that I tend to live by these days is the standing out from the crowd. I think that there's so many interaction in sales that look very similar, and especially if you go on LinkedIn these days, you find a lot of like I think about cold emailing as a pure example, like very very similar examples, and even with cold calling, very very similar. And I think that in this AI driven world, which will refine things more and more, the more you're gonna stand out from the crowd, the more you, even in a quirky way, wearing like a orange hat, or like a big white like
Your earphones.
microphone and
Yeah.
headset. Like these are the things that will help you stand out. So I think embrace the authenticity and just try to be yourself, and you're probably going to be a better salesperson because of it.
Yeah. Oh, well, we have got another couple of minutes, but this could be a whole hour's worth of discussion. But I'm going to ask it anyway. Might we stand out by practicing ethical selling? Could that be the differentiator, that by being very deliberate, very clear on how you sell, what you do, that approach, that is the thing which elevates you and raises you above everything else? Because at the end of the day, yeah, you can stick white headphones on, you can stick an orange hat on, you can do all that.
Mhm,
But your reputation, what people are saying when you're not in the room, that's
mhm, mhm.
that's the key, isn't it? So
Of
could
course.
ethical selling be your standout approach?
But ethical selling is essentially you picking the delayed gratification, right? When it comes to making sales decisions. Obviously, like you building this bulletproof brand of I am always gonna serve you right, in a sea of people that are slowly becoming a bit more ethical because they have to, not because they want to. Of course, if you're genuinely applying that approach, you're gonna stand out like a lighthouse in the middle of a storm.
Interesting. I think that is the case. I generally do. Hence this mini series and trying to open people's eyes to it. And if they get a little bit more deliberate in some of the stuff that you've shared, other guests are sharing, then I think we can move sales towards a slightly better place. Um,
Indeed.
but Giulio, look, great. You've shared a ton of stuff here. A lot of good thinking, as always. Where can people catch up with you and find more of your thoughts? Because I mean, you do put out good stuff
Yeah,
on a
like,
regular basis.
look, the easiest way is just to follow me on social media. I think LinkedIn and weirdly TikTok are the two places where I'm the most active right now. And I think just connect with me there. I'm always happy to engage with people that need advice. And yeah, I think that's the best way to keep in touch with me.
Do you dance on TikTok?
I don't, not yet, but that's a good point. Maybe I should. Maybe I should. I recently did my, I don't know if you saw the rhyming cold email sequence where I send a full cold email sequence entirely in rhyme. And yeah, so I'm trying very crazy stuff.
You're not the first person to have said TikTok on this mini series, so I'm gonna have to get myself over there. I'm like, oh, awesome. I'll put both the links in. We'll put both the links into the show notes. But all right, thank you again for
Thank you very much, Fred.
really
Great,
appreciate it.
great. Thank you. Great to be here. Cheers.
Thank you for listening to the Sales Today podcast with me, your host, Fred Copestake. I hope you've enjoyed what you heard today. If you did, please get in touch and hit subscribe. And remember, you can take the collaborative selling scorecard for free to check out how your sales approach works in today's environment. You'll find it in the show notes.